All right, friends, Robin Black here with my friend, Dr. David Klonsky. Dave is a professor of psychology at the University of British Columbia. We've got together a number of times. We're slowly, very, very slowly working on a book together called 90% Mental. And it's good to be hanging with you again.
Yep, always fun.
Now, there's something, so you are a professor of psychology. It's been your lifelong study. You also study and love the martial arts and fighting, and so that's how we became friends. But your specialty in psychology is in injury and self-injury and suicide, right?
Suicide and self-injury, right.
And that's why often when you are in Toronto, you're at the University of British Columbia, you're doing a talk or sharing something with people in the world of psychology.
Right, exactly.
And this time you're going off to Montreal to make a presentation.
Right. There's a great suicide researcher there, Gustavo Turecki. He runs a fairly large operation, has an annual meeting, and so I'll get to give a talk there, but excited to stop here on the way.
Yeah, it's always fun hanging with you. We drank too many beer or whiskey or both last night, but I feel pretty good.
It was fun. It was a little too much.
That's all right. But now, one thing that you mentioned to me is you've seen somebody that I think we both have a very positive view of, and we're kind of cheer for on some level, Ronda Rousey. And you've seen her as like a very positive mental health advocate. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, she's been open about her own mental health struggles. She's been open about her family history, which includes her father dying by suicide. I know she supports Didi Hirsch, which is a mental health organization. And I'm excited that there's an advocate like her. And I think she has the potential to advocate in ways she hasn't realized yet. But it's complicated. One example of this is when she openly spoke about her feeling suicidal after her loss to Holly Holm. I think it was on Ellen. There was some strong reactions from the public sphere, not all of them positive. I think some of them were from well-meaning people who meant to be positive, but the reaction was something like, if she felt that way, she needs to just get out of fighting. And this is an area that's actually a problem that people don't realize, that sometimes there's a stigma around mental health issues where if someone acknowledges struggling with something, which is frankly not that uncommon, then we suddenly see them as weak and fragile and not fit to contribute to society. Rhonda's not fit to participate in her career. That's just my opinion. It's for her own good. And that's
uninformed opinion.
Yeah, and it gets a little dangerous. I mean, it's not impossible that someone's in a mental state where they're dealing with things where they should focus on, but it also should not be our automatic reaction that if someone discloses mental health struggles, somehow they need a break or they're too fragile for MMA or some other career. We want to be careful about that. We want people to be able to talk about mental health like physical health, and it doesn't somehow make them less capable in the world.
If you have a knee injury, you can still go, my knee is sore, but I still do my job.
Yeah, if someone has a knee injury, no one says, oh, did you see those photographs of the knee injury? He just needs to stop competing in the UFC. That knee, that looked terrible. People don't react the same way. And so Ronda has been and can continue to be an example of someone who doesn't hide from talking about these issues, can participate in the world in a number of ways, not just MMA, entertainment, mental health advocacy, all sorts of ways, and be an example of how you can do that. And so I'm hoping that she continues her interest in being a role model, being an advocate in this way, and that's just one thing I admire her for. I mean, frankly, the MMA fan part of me admires her for a million other ways. It's just coincidence that this is also a role that she plays that I hope she keeps playing.
Even as an expert, in this area, you probably have to admit that we've never seen, maybe I'm wrong, but tell me if this is so. We've never been able to see somebody who will deal with something like this somewhat publicly and then deal with the fact that they are hugely famous in a world where many people hate you and pile on you. And most people could ignore if you talked about something like that and some asshole said, well, good, I hope you kill yourself. She can probably ignore those losers, right? But then, like you said, there will be another side where people are well-meaning but still damaging.
Right.
And it being so public and so heavy, that has never really existed before. Do you even know how somebody would experience that and how they would deal with that? Because has it ever been seen?
No, I mean, you're right that it's we keep taking, whether it's social media or television and spectacle. The whole media spectacle keeps getting bigger and bigger. And of course, it's just a tremendous amount of pressure to be under that kind of spotlight. Most people do care how they're perceived. They care how people react to them. And to be in the spotlight like that, especially when you're putting your soul, your identity, it's all on the line and in front of everyone, and then it goes well, and doesn't go well. And now people have all these reactions to how you reacted to that. And I can't imagine how difficult that is. And I imagine different people would cope in different ways. But that's got to be hard for her. And I feel for her because she probably is in some ways dealing with something that's almost unprecedented or unprecedented.
Yeah, and there's not the automatic thought that if you are experiencing, it's something you would study with somebody who may be, experiencing suicidal thoughts or those kinds of things. You can't automatically just go, well, it would be like that times 100. New things may take shape as instead of one person judging you, millions judge you or treat you a certain way. Like when she did that face-to-face the other day, Dana White, who is a very smart man and is probably very protective of her, said, well, they weren't going to face off anyways. And that may be true. But we got lots of reports from the back that she was very upset in the back and needing to be consoled and stuff like that, which, you could have somebody here who the pressure of the public scrutiny and losing and all of those things has damaged her. That's a possibility.
Definitely. I mean, as the same way that some people get hurt enough or hurt repeatedly, whether it's concussions or knees and torn ACLs, where sometimes people can come back from them and strong, and sometimes they can't. I mean, it's true. There's no guarantee that Ronda's going to be completely fine mentally. But she might, and that's sort of her call, and it's her team's call. And if she has a good team around her, and unfortunately it's not completely clear that that's the case, there are ways to deal with this. I mean, there could even be very smart ways where someone says, yeah, it makes sense that this is hard for you, being in the spotlight again after a really difficult loss.
And the way people responded and treated you and the way you experienced that as a human being.
So let's create some situations where you put yourself out in the spotlight where the stakes are a little bit lower and you can just get used to it. Yeah. Have some experiences that are neutral or even positive. And then by the time your fight comes along, it's not as big a deal to suddenly be front and center again. That would be one small example of how someone could help, her team could help her just be more and more ready for this. Yeah, there's visualization techniques that could be used. I mean, for some people, if it's right, you can even, just do straightforward therapy, if the therapist knows what they're doing. So there's lots of ways something like that could be approached, but there's no question she's in a difficult position. It's very rare that any individual on this planet has to deal with what she has to deal with, and that's hard, and it could get in her way.
And if we look at some of the broad base ways to look at it, something we talked about when we were talking about McGregor and facing him too, the first thing that you have to do in most of these cases is accept and identify the truth and the reality. So if the truth is, I'm a bit of a mess, this has been very hard on me, then you can go and say, what are we going to do about it?
Right.
If you say, don't worry about that shit, I'm just going to ignore it, and when I get back to it, I'm going to own it. We're not going to be doing our...
Yeah, that's difficult because we almost saw that play out in a smaller way with Holly Holm, where she seemed to not take the fight so seriously leading up to it. And then the closer she got to it, this is a complete inference, it was almost like she realized this is going to be harder than other fights. And I think we talked about this. It almost seemed like she was being a slightly inauthentic version of herself, with her, fight face. Which usually is just authentic and real, and it seemed like she was having to amp it up in response to some sense that I'm not as ready as I thought. And, if I were to make an inference, which, why not? I'm a psychology person on a podcast.
about psychology.
I thought that's how she looked in the Amanda Nunes face-off, which is like, I'm going to put on my Rousey face and go out there. Yeah. But it didn't feel perfectly authentic. Who knows?
But feel is a tricky thing. And you are more qualified to make that, to express your observations based on your feeling than 99.99% of the world. However, it's still a feeling.
Yes, it's still just a feeling. Yeah. But it looked like that, so who knows? Yeah. And so I do have some worry that you didn't do what you're saying. That I am really struggling with this issue. It is hard for me to be in the public, and it's not just a matter of letting time pass and then, bullying forward. Yeah. I need to somehow own this and deal with it. That I've been defeated in some way, and this is affecting me in these ways, and what can I do with deal with it? And if she were able to take that approach, I think she'd be much better off. I mean, in some ways, she's one of the most brilliant competitors we've seen, That's one of the reasons why it's so confusing for me that she has some of the struggles she does, because I see her as not just athletically gifted and with a beautiful judo background, but very smart in a lot of ways. And it's been confusing to me to see her stick with a coaching staff that maybe isn't.
All the evidence says this guy is not good, and I'm so rare to be critical. You got to go really far for me to criticize a fighter or a coach or anything. But we just have mountains of evidence that suggests this guy's not equipped to be in somebody's corner. He doesn't bring the full set of necessary tools to coach a high-level athlete. We
almost have the experiments where fighters go train with him, get worse, then go train with someone else, get better.
Yeah. I mean, the evidence is there. And so, if the idea, it's a strange thing, this idea of loyalty, because loyalty is a very powerful and admirable trait. But if we acknowledge that there are times that you should no longer be loyal. Now, if we go to the extreme, if somebody murders an animal or kills, lights a house on fire or harms another person, you probably will not be loyal to them. Now that's the extreme, but if that extreme shows that loyalty is not an eternal thing that it's binary, either loyal forever or not loyal forever, then we have to examine when the times to not be loyal are. And he's, in this case, between your mother, Travis Brown, the performance in the back, how he managed her in that fight, the things he teaches that ultimately she finds herself unequipped, that loyalty is damaging to you at this stage.
And it doesn't even have to be black and white. She doesn't have to completely jettison him. She could, lots of people have multiple coaches or learn from multiple people. She could just spend time with another striking coach to just something. And it's confusing. And I guess also, it's not just confusing, it's distressing. Because like you said in the beginning, for whatever reason, we have a positive affinity for her. I want her to succeed. I want to see her overcome this in a meaningful way, not just because she willed herself through it, but because she owned it and overcame it and honestly assessed what was going on. And that would make me happy to see that. And so I want that to happen.
Well, and as we started talking about, you working in the field that you work in, has seen tons of positive effects of her as a mental health advocate. Coming through it the right way and making changes and learning and then sharing that story, that's an even more powerful mental advocate.
It would be great. I mean, one of the problems with the stigma around suicide is people don't want to talk about it. And so people who don't have direct exposure to it, to people who have felt suicidal, get to carry their stigma that it's just a sign of someone who's like flawed and unrepairable. But the world is filled with examples. The new president of University of British Columbia is a great example. He talked openly about 2 times in his life when he felt suicidal, and he is, he's on all these lists of like the university presidents to watch in North America. I mean, he is really something special. We're loving him here at UBC. He was at University of Cincinnati before, and they really miss him. And we just need more examples of those people in the world who are thriving and contributing, productive members of society, and they've also had experiences feeling suicidal or having attempted suicide, to help break this idea that if you have that experience, you're somehow damaged and don't tell anyone because people will judge you. So yes,
so people do judge. That's the really gross part.
They'll judge less if there's more examples of people where it's obvious you can have this experience and be like anybody else. That will be a powerful way to break the judgments that people make. Even well-meaning people will make those judgments. It's not just insensitive people. Well-meaning people will hear about someone with this experience and have judgments about how competent they can be or what they need to do with their life. So I would love that to be broken too. But honestly, even beyond that, I like Ronda as an athlete. I like her as a competitor. And I'd love to see her succeed the same way that I've enjoyed seeing Conor McGregor succeed, by honestly embracing the reality of himself, of his opponents. It's fun. It's gratifying to see people be good at that.
It's true. And, as fans, why do we watch the Cubs or fighting or even somebody sing or dance? It's supposed to be to learn things about ourselves. It's supposed to be for the betterment of us, the viewers. If you want to hate somebody that's doing something special, you do have that right, for sure. But it shocks me that goes to the default for so many people, and that idea spreads,
Right. It's certainly not what draws me to sports. I love the marriage of physicality with mental preparation and execution. And even yesterday, when we were out and there's a game on where I happened to care about which team won. The wrong team executed this beautiful play involving misdirection, and I just loved seeing it, even though it was against my team, because it was so beautifully, diagrammed, and then they executed it well. And MMA is the ultimate version of that. This ultimate high stakes physical intense environment, but the top people have to be so smart and they have to execute their game plan with urgency, not just punch with urgency, but be smart with urgency. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really, really is.
And it's hard to hate that if someone's trying to do that.
It's hard for you to hate that. It's hard for me to hate that, but it doesn't seem that hard for some people. But hopefully they hear conversations about it and they think about it and they go, well, that egghead over there has that opinion and the weirdo over here, but maybe I can look at it like that too. But it's great hanging out with you, man, and I look forward to next time. And let's get back in on Skype, and we'll try, like we did a couple of times, to document the work that we're going to do, that we're going to continue to do. But so far, he's written a bunch of stuff, and I've thrown ideas that are constantly changing. But I think that's the fun.
For sure.
If we had sat down and said, well, 2 years ago, we're writing it. The things that we've already learned and where we've pushed the research and the study has gone so far beyond that we'd have to throw that out.
Yeah, well, we have an outline right now of the book, but it's like the third or fourth version for good reason. Yeah. And that'll keep going, and I'm not in a rush. I would like us to do it in our lifetime, but I'm not in a rush. I like the process.
Yeah, me too. So follow David on Twitter, Klonsky MMA. And thanks for hanging with us. And next time Dave's in town, we'll get together and we'll try to put some stuff up on the web of us just working on the book concepts. Thanks so much, guys.